to another episode of Conscious Me Up with Bianca Savich. Today we're going to be talking about letting go of anger and hate. So anger and hate. What is anger and hate? How much anger and hate is being done on the planet today? You know, every time that you have to fight for and against any point of view, anytime you have to hate someone or something, whether it can be a country, a religion, a person, just anything that there is out there that you have that hatred or anger for. When you get angry, what does that actually create for you? Does it actually create more for your life when you put out anger out there? You know, a lot of people think they use anger in a way to have control. They use anger in a way that they think that they're going to get what they want if they use anger. That anger and force kind of thing. That's like, if I use my anger and force, I can get anything I want. Is that really the case though? How much do people actually want to contribute to you when you're being angry? When you're acting angry? Not many. You know, even for myself now, I notice whenever you call anyone, if I call the tax office or if I call an insurance company or anything you call these days, there's always like a disclaimer on the phone before that you actually speak to the operator while you're on hold. And it always says, if you start getting angry at the person or start being abusive, we have the right to terminate the phone call and we will not help you. And that's because it's been happening. Well, obviously for them to make a disclaimer, there must be a lot of people that are starting to get really, really angry. When you do get angry, no one doesn't really want to contribute to you. Yet we still have this point of view that if I get angry, I'm going to get what I want. Because in the past, it may have worked for you that if you got angry and then you got what you want just because the person was like, I just want to get you as far away as possible from me, so I'm just going to do it. But now it's not so much working anymore. You know, now a lot of people are either reacting back to the anger or they're just kind of like hanging up on you if it's on the phone and saying, I'm not helping you anymore. And I've seen it. I remember I had to go to court a few years back and we're in there waiting for the case that we're there for. And so we're watching other people's cases go through. And one person who was representing himself, he came up and he just started screaming at the judge and yelling, saying how, you know, the other person was doing all this stuff. And look, the person could have been not guilty in the situation it was. But because this person was so aggressive towards the judge and everyone in the courtroom, the judge actually said, look, I'm not helping you today. I'm adjourning your court to another, and when they adjourn it for like another 6 months. And now this person had to wait another 6 months to come back because he goes, you're just being too aggressive. He actually got the police officers to come and collect him and take him out of the courtroom and said, we're not doing this today. We're going to adjourn this for another 6 months. You can come back. So because this person got angry and frustrated, what happened to this person? Now he's got to hold on to what's going to happen in this situation for another 6 months. How much is that waiting when you have to wait for some information to come to you? It's not really fun. It's not a contribution. It's more stress on you having to now, this person has to wait, rather than this person just came in, acted cool, calm, collected, told the judge what the situation was. Look, he may have got off the charges if he wasn't guilty, if there was, I'm not sure what the case was. But how many times has this actually happened in your life where you go to someone out of anger, and it can be your partner, it can be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be a friend. You know, you hear some information, someone tells you some information about something, and they're not really telling you from a contribution either, because if you're going to get angry at that information, they're kind of telling you so you can start a fight with that person or that thing. And if your immediate reaction is, I've got to call this person and tell them off now, what's that actually going to create? How many relationships have been destroyed because you go into that anger instantaneously without actually looking at it from a different point of view? We don't actually look at it from a different point of view because we get so caught up in that. It's like that anger. It has like an adrenaline to when we have that anger or that hate. And it's kind of like you start to lose control of yourself and you just go into this rage kind of thing. So what a tool that I can give you to assist in this, whenever you do start to go into that anger, and it's about acknowledging when you're actually going into the anger. And sometimes you won't acknowledge it because you just get so caught up in it. But when you actually start to get angry at something, because anger, rage, and fury and hate I'm going to use them all because they kind of all interrelate to each other. They're all distractor implants. Now, what is a distractor implant? A distractor implant is in place to distract you from what actually is really going on. It's something that's been happening to us, that it's to stop our awareness showing that's actually what's going on in that situation. So say if someone's telling you, oh, this person said horrible things about you, and you're automatically going to go into anger if that is someone that's close to you. Instead of going to the anger, what when that anger comes up, you could actually use this tool. All the distractor implants creating this anger, destroy and uncreate them all, and use the Access Consciousness clearing statement. I'll have a link in the description of the podcast on what the clearing statement means. So it's right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100, shorts, boys, povads, creations, basis, and beyond. So I'll repeat that again. So whenever anger starts to come up for you, if you can start catching it before you actually react to the anger, if you go, all the distractor implants of anger coming up here, will I destroy and uncreate them all? Yes. You have to say yes. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100, shorts, boys, povads, basis, creations, and beyonds. Now, you might have to say this clearing statement a few times. So it's not saying like when the anger comes up, I'm going to say this clearing statement once and the anger is just going to vanish. No. How long have we been doing anger for? A long time. So not just us that are doing anger, the whole world's doing anger. You know, if anyone says to you, I don't do anger, look, unless you do, even for myself, I've been doing Access Consciousness for over 10 years now, the tools and the questions, and I can still get caught up in anger. The only difference for me is now the anger, it's not so much my anger, I'm just aware of other people's anger. And that's the thing about when things are so, when there's a massive amount of people being angry at certain situations, it actually creates more destruction than a contribution of change. Because the thing is with anger, it is very contagious as well. When people are, it's like, look at an example. When you go to someone's house and someone's just had a fight and you walk into that room and you have that sense of uncomfortableness, you can sense that kind of angry kind of energy, or, you know, it's not kind of a friendly place to be. Do you notice that kind of uncomfortableness that you kind of sensing? You're like, I want to get the hell out of here as quickly as possible. That's when there's like that's how contagious it is and how we're aware of what's going on. So the more people that are angry around you and in the world, the more you're actually going to be angry. You know, for me, sometimes it comes up to be angry at, say, my brother or my mum, or even my partner as well. And most of the time, and sometimes I'm not saying I'm perfect, and no one's perfect here. Even when you're using these tools, it's about acknowledging when you're actually getting caught up, and that's what can change for you. And the more you start to acknowledging where you're getting angry and what's triggering you, that's the more it's actually going to change, and you won't get as angry as things as you did before. You actually start to see, okay, what's this really about? What's the awareness here, rather than going into the anger, the trauma, the drama. You know, a lot of people like the trauma and drama. So if you like trauma and drama, this podcast is probably not for you. If you're someone that's kind of like, I'm done with the trauma and drama, you know, some of these tools might work for you. You know, what would it take for there to be a different possibility now? You know, everyone's using the hatred towards certain religions or certain countries. They have the wars when there's constant conflict, fighting that for and against, who's better, who's worse, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. Look, there's no good guy and there's no bad guy. Everyone always thinks, oh, this side's good and this side's bad. Yeah, but what's the other side doing? You know, there's always, it's like that tennis match of going back and forward. One side can only keep going because the other side's retaliating. So both sides, you know, a lot of people like to say, oh, that person's so angry, you know, they wouldn't let this go, or, you know, but then what are you doing? Are you still fighting for that point of view as well? It's like when you have a fight with someone, a partner or friend or whatever, and you just won't let go of the point of view. You know, I've had situations even before Access where you would have a fight with someone and you just hold on to that point of view, like, no, I'm right. And then they'll be like, no, I'm right. No, this is the way it is. No, that's the way it is. And you just keep going back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. And then what happens? How many friendships or family relationships have you had that have ended because of one argument that you had? All it takes is one argument. One argument can destroy a whole family, a whole relationship, a whole friendship. It can just destroy so much. One argument. And what's the argument? It's when you're doing it from anger. It's different if you're having a discussion with someone and you're using potency. See, a lot of people get anger and potency confused because potency has the same kind of similar energy to anger, where you're being so potent that your energy just changes something instantaneously. But when you're doing, like, you can scream at someone with potency, but when you're screaming at someone with potency, like, say, I'm not saying screaming, but say you're using a louder voice with potency, you don't actually have any adrenaline and pumping in yourself. So that means, say if you said to someone in potency, but you said it in a more stern voice or a bit more louder to someone, when you said it from potency, after that situation happened, you wouldn't have any like that adrenaline, that your heart's racing and you feel fired up. You wouldn't have that after you said that to someone. That's when you know that you're using potency. When you're using anger, which is the distractor implant, which is the anger, after you have that argument with someone, if it's, got really heated, you actually start to feel jittery. You feel like, you have that nervous energy, you have that adrenaline pumping into you. And sometimes you want to keep going with you have that, like, that push to, I want to kill that person, if depending on the situation, what it was, or, I just want to hurt that person, I want to destroy their stuff. You go into that mental rage. If you're getting that after you've said what you said, you're not doing it from a potency, you're doing it from anger, and that's the distractor implant. So what's going to happen when you're doing stuff from distractor implant anger? What's going to get created? Nothing. The situation is going to get worse and worse and worse. And how many people actually want to contribute to you when you're doing anger? I know for me, when someone's being angry toward me, I don't want to help them at all. What do I want to do? I want to get the hell away from them. I don't care how much help they need or how much they're screaming at me. All I'm thinking is, how can I get away from this person? And that is what every single other person on the planet is doing. And that is why they've made a disclaimer where when you call certain companies now, they say if you're being aggressive with the telephone assistant, they just have the right to hang up on you and not help you at all. Because you can't really help someone when they're in that state. It may have worked for you in the past because, you've got angry at someone and when you're in front of them, they're just like, yeah, I'm going to do it because I'm scared of this situation. It's changing now. Like before, when I used to be a shop assistant when I was a teenager, and I remember it was always about the customer. Whatever the customer said is always correct. They still say that's the correct now, but now shops kind of have a different point of view. A lot of shop people you go to, they're kind of more aggressive with you than you are with them now. I'll give you an example. Me and my brother, we have an antique company, so we have a workshop, and we had a wet and dry vacuum cleaner that we bought from Bunnings. We had one before previously. We actually had a smaller version to the one we purchased, and it works really well. And then we got the same brand, but more powerful version of it. And it just didn't do anything. It didn't suck up anything. It was kind of really, it just did not work. Anyway, one day I just said to my brother, I go, let's take it back. I go and see if we can get a new brand, because this one obviously isn't working, or maybe this one's just faulty. It was still within its warranty as well. So it wasn't like we're returning something that was 10 years old or something. Anyway, we went to Bunnings. My brother actually went there because I was doing something else. So he's like, I'll take it. Anyway, the person, she wasn't really happy about returning the item, but I was like, look, I'm happy to buy something else. And he actually chose another one. Then he chose one that was actually double the price of this one because it was a better brand. So we would actually paid them more money for the item. Anyway, this person, all she had to do was do an exchange, whatever. But she started to be a bit aggressive with my brother. My brother's a very calm person. He uses the tools of access consciousness. And she's like, I'll have to refund you first, and then you have to pay for the thing. My brother actually said, okay, can you just like take the credit and put it, and then I'll just pay the balance. She's like, no, I can't do that. She could do that because I've worked in retail and that's pretty much how you do it. But she just wanted to be difficult. And when she goes, we actually bought this item online Bunnings. And because we purchased it over just under a year, the item actually was purchased on a credit card I don't have anymore, a debit card. And she was actually going to return it into an account that we didn't actually have. And my brother actually called me and told me, I'm like, I'll tell her you can't do that because we don't have that account. Anyway, my brother told the lady, but she already did it. And my brother's like, well, what do we do now? And she's like, well, you can't do nothing now. We've returned it to you. That's too bad, so sad. She actually said that. I heard her on the phone because my brother actually had me on this phone still while I was talking to her. And this person was just being quite aggressive to my brother. I could hear her, how she was speaking. My brother was like, okay. I kind of started to get a bit angry I was starting to get a bit, and then I acknowledged. My brother's like, hold on a minute. He goes like, look, I'm not going to get angry here. I'm just going to walk away from the situation. You tell me what you want me to do. My brother actually left the store because they took the vacuum cleaner. So they took the vacuum cleaner. They gave us a refund to an account that's not going to, have the money. So it's not going to go in. It's actually, even when that happens, it goes into account and then it gets taken back out. And then what ended up happening, I just did some processes. I'm like, everything this is bringing up. I acknowledge I was aware of this person's anger, the cash register person. I'm not really sure why she was being so angry. It's not her personal money that she's returning, but this person was. And so I just did some processes. I'm like, okay, what else is possible here? I called my bank. I said, is there any way to, and they're like, no, once it goes in, there's no account there. That account's been closed. So it's not going to go anywhere. So it's going to go back to their account. So I'm like, okay, what else is possible? I actually asked some questions. What else is possible here? What would it take to have ease with this, with Bunnings? What would it take to have ease with receiving a new vacuum cleaner? And I always had we also had to have the point of view of, what if I don't get the refund back? Does it matter? Like, I still use the vacuum cleaner. Look, it didn't work how it should have worked. It was very frustrating to use it. But at the same time, what was I going to do with it? I was going to probably chuck it in the bin anyway. So if anything, us leaving it at Bunnings, they actually helped us out by they can dispose of the item. So we didn't actually have to do that. So even if that's the gift of them just chucking it out for us, how does it get any better than that? And we use that tool. How does it get any better than that? Anyway, even not in this moment, I was like, what else is possible here? And I kind of was like, I got to the point where I'm like, I don't really care if I get the whatever. We can't use it anyway. It wasn't usable, this item. Anyway, something came to me and just said, call Bunnings head office. So I called Bunnings head office. And even for that, I was on hold for, I think, for an hour. But I was like, I put it on speaker and I was just doing my work. My brother actually came home. I finally spoke to someone in head office and I'm like, look, this is what happened. The person, didn't want to exchange it. She did this, blah, blah, blah. The person goes to me, goes, give me a few minutes. I'm just going to call that branch and I'll let me see what happens. She called that branch. A couple of minutes later, she gets on the phone. Now, I was speaking calmly with her. I told her what happened. I didn't go into the emotions of it. I didn't be like, oh, this is what happened. This person was a bitch. This person did this. She was angry. I didn't go into that. I just said, look, my brother went there. This item didn't work. They returned the money into the card. We don't have that account anymore. You guys have still got the vacuum cleaner. We don't really have anything. What else is possible here? And I just gave her the facts. I just gave her what happened with no emotional attachment, not getting aggressive, not blaming, not shaming anyone, just saying what happened. A few seconds later, she gets back on the phone. She goes, okay, go speak to this person when you go to the head office. They'll give you a credit note or you can exchange, whatever you prefer. I'm like, okay, cool. I went down to the Bunnings. I just walked in. I just asked this person. They already knew who I was. It was so good because my brother actually got the vacuum cleaner. It was actually even still at the register section there in a trolley. So I didn't even have to go and search for the item of what it was. And there was a massive line. They actually pushed me in front of the line. They're like, I'm so sorry, what happened? Here you go. The person actually even said to me, I'm really sorry what happened. I really hope you still shop with us. I've never had someone say that to me before in a situation. I didn't get angry at them. I didn't blame, again, the person. I just like, cool. Now, that could have been a complete different situation if I got caught up into the anger. And my brother didn't really get caught up into the anger. I was starting to pick up a little bit of the person's anger, the registered person's anger, but I acknowledged what was going on and I could change it. So it's not saying that when you use these tools, it's not going to come up that the anger's not there. It will still come up and you'll pick up their anger as well. When you're acknowledging what's going on, that's how the distractor implant works. It distracts you from what's actually going on. Because what would have happened if my brother got angry at this person in the store? If I got angry when I was at home, what would have happened? That person would have just said, you have to leave the store. They would have called security. They would have said, you have to exit the store. They would have kept the vacuum. We would have had nothing and we wouldn't have got anything. Yes, I know we didn't want the vacuum anymore. It wasn't working. But it would have been a completely different thing. And then would have been always thinking, oh my God, they did this to me, they stole from me because they didn't give me back my money. And this item was still like a couple $100 item. So it wasn't an item that was $10. We're willing to let go of a $200. My brother completely walked out of the store for over a $200 item. And it's like, okay, well, you keep it, whatever. You help me dispose of the item. And he just had the point of view, like, whatever happens, happens. How's it getting better than this? He didn't want to argue. He didn't want to go into that person's reality of anger. This person probably had a bad day today and just she was angry and she wanted to spread her anger out to more people. So that's the thing. Anger can be like a virus. It can be spread very easily and very quickly. But what if you stopped it? What if you stopped that anger contamination in its tracks? And in that moment, if you've been someone that's had the similar situation where you haven't reacted to someone in a situation like that, whether it's, going to a shop and doing that or in another situation, if you actually haven't gone into the reaction of that person's anger and brought that anger, then that actually stops that in its tracks. Now, next time that person has to speak to another person if they're having a bad day, maybe they're not going to be speaking to that person in that manner, because who knows what happened to that person. I know for myself when I worked in retail, whenever you call head office and head office has to call your store and make a complaint, it's like a massive thing. It's a really big thing. I know for me when I worked in retail, if you got told by head office that there was a complaint or something happened, it was like a massive downgrade on your store. And it got brought up in lots of meetings, even if you didn't find out about it. The managers and stuff, they talk about it all the time, like, oh, your store had a complaint. That some people can get fired over that. I'm not saying this person got fired over this, but things can happen to that extent just because you're having an angry day. So what would it take for this to change? What would it take for anger to not be a reality for us anymore? And every time you actually go, all the distractor implants of anger, rage, fury, and hate, creating this, destroy and uncreate them all. Yes, right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100, shorts, boys, provads, basis, creations, and beyonds. And that's all you have to do. Even acknowledging it. Like when you starting to pick up anger and you're around people that are being angry, you can actually say, okay, acknowledge. You can actually even ask the question, is this anger mine? You'll probably get a yes or a no. And if you get a no, which is most of the time you should get a no, is, okay, who is this anger? Everywhere I'm buying this anger as mine, stop it and return that to sender with consciousness attached. When you return something to sender with consciousness attached, you're returning it back to where it came, but you're returning it to them so they can have an awareness of what's going on. They don't have to have an awareness of what's gone. They may not, but you're giving them that possibility, like, hey, dude, you're projecting all this anger out at people. Is this something you really want to do? That's what you're doing when you're returning it. So you're returning it back to them with consciousness attached so they can get an awareness of what they're doing, rather than people just continuing to live. A lot of people, everyone does so much anger that people are actually starting to think that it's normal, but it's not. It's not really creative. And I'm using this on a store basis, but it's in a larger scale as well. When people have anger towards certain things, like a larger scale for certain nationalities, for certain religions, for certain countries, or what they're doing and what they're not doing. What does that create when you have that anger? Does it actually change anything, or does it just fuel that anger more so more people are angry at it? What can actually change when people are angry? Like I just used that example with the shop assistant. If anger was used there, if anger was used on both sides, nothing would have got resolved and no one would have been happy. Even the person that, even if she kept the refund, was that person going to be happy if she was like, yes, I didn't give a refund back for an item? Or it wasn't even a refund, it was an exchange. Was that really going to make that person happier? Maybe for 10 seconds, she's like, oh yes, I saved the company $200. But she's still going to go into her anger again. It's not actually going to create anything more. But for us, what did it create? Well, like, okay, if we lose it, we lose it. We don't have to chuck it in the bin. We don't have to find a way to dispose of it. It's quite large, so it doesn't actually fit in the bin. So we might have to pay to actually remove this item. So they helped us out in that sense. And because we're willing to lose the outcome of what was going to happen, we actually will be able to receive a new vacuum cleaner. And the vacuum cleaner we got is phenomenal. It's 1,000 times better than the one we got. It's probably the best vacuum cleaner I've ever bought. That wouldn't have occurred if we went into anger. And that happens everywhere. Everyone thinks if I scream the loudest, if I show all this anger towards our country and tell them what we have to change, then that's going to... No. Taking action is what is actually going to change something. Having kindness is actually going to be what's going to change something. How many people out there know what true kindness is? True kindness. True kindness isn't about being a doormat or being nice to someone. True kindness is about allowing someone to choose no matter what it is without any judgment. Even if you know it's going to be not great for them, you're like, okay, I'm just going to allow them to choose whatever it is because they have to choose for themselves. That's being kindness. But everyone's trying to project this hatred. Oh, we've got to get these people are doing this, these people are doing that. What's that going to create? Nothing. Does anyone want to help those people? Everyone tries to act like, the drama queens. My life, so this is happening. Yeah, but what action are you doing to change it? Those people that keep saying, we need help here, they don't actually want the help. Because if you gave them the help, then they'll have to find something else to complain about. No one can ever help you. No one. I learned this a long time ago. I was married before. I got divorced probably 4 years ago. And I was married for just over 10 years. And one thing that I learned, I'm so grateful for that relationship, is the biggest thing I learned is you can never make anyone else happy, and you can never help anyone. They have to be able to do that themselves. No one on this planet can make you happy. No one. The only person that can make you happy is you. My ex-partner used to always say to me, oh, you're meant to make me happy here, or you're meant to do this. But even I'm like, okay, I actually used that, and I was like, I'm going to do everything he said and see what happens. I did absolutely everything he said that he wanted that was going to make him more happy. And when I did them, then he just found other things that was like, oh, this doesn't make me happy. This doesn't make me happy. And eventually I got to the point, I'm like, this person is never going to be happy. But in this person's head, all they're thinking about is, this person has to make me happy. If they don't make me happy, then I'm not going to be happy. But it's not that you can't actually make anyone happy. The only person you can make happy is you. You think you can make people happy, but you can't. You have to be able to be the one that finds your happiness and your joy. And that's what can happen. Once you start to get out of the anger of this reality, you can actually start to enjoy the things you have. So I've kind of given you a bit of examples here, and just other tools I can give you is whenever you do go into that anger, whether it's a world thing, like there's a lot of stuff going around the world now, a lot of the stuff that's bringing up a lot of anger issues, like a lot of topics that brings up a lot of anger. Actually ask, what is the awareness underneath all this? POC and POD, you can use actually POC and POD as a shorter version of the clearing statement. So if you go, a POC and POD all the distractor implants of anger here, POC and POD all the distractor implants of anger here, POC and POD all the distractor implants of anger here, POC and POD all the distractor implants of anger here. And then ask, what information is really true here? What's the awareness here that I'm not getting? What's really occurring here? You can use that whether it's on a global issue, or you can actually use it on just, a simple issue of you purchasing something from a store or having an argument with someone. You can actually ask, what's really happening here? What is the awareness here? Because when you get the awareness of what actually is going on, then you start to be like, okay, this is why they're doing this. How much do they use anger to distract you from actually what's going on, so that you're distracted by this anger? It's like the magic trick. They distract you here with what they're doing with their hands, but what they're actually doing is behind the scenes, and you can't see it because you're too busy looking at what they're showing you, the spectacle they're showing you in front here. You're watching that, but you're not seeing what they're actually doing. That's what happens with the distractor implants. That's what it's meant to do. It's distracting you what's actually really happening. When you actually know what's really happening, that's when you can actually start to change the situation. Just yourself by acknowledging this anger is not yours, acknowledging this anger is everyone else's stuff on the planet. That in itself can change, because it means you're stopping that destruction from occurring in your life. And that's what it takes. A lot of people think that it requires a lot of people to change things on this planet, but it doesn't. It requires people that are just willing to choose something different. And the more people that are willing to choose something different, the greater this reality can be, not just for you, but for everyone. Because what would it take for there to be no anger, no hate? I've given you a bit of information there, so I think we'll leave it at that. But the only thing I can say to you is just every time the anger comes up, and it still comes up for me. I've been doing these tools for over 10 years and it still comes up for me because I'm picking up other people's stuff. We're just so aware of what's around us that most of the time we're just picking up a lot of people's other anger. For me, I know I pick up a lot of people's other anger because I actually don't get angry towards things. A lot of things don't make me angry as I used to. Like I would see certain things that before would make me so angry, and I'm just like, okay, I just laugh at it now because I kind of think it's funny. Or you ask the question, what is really going on here? What's the awareness here that I need here? And the information will come to you. It may not come to you straight away if you're just new to these tools, but it will come to you. Just keep using these tools, keep using these questions, keep clearing the destructive implants of anger, rage, and hate. You can use them all free. And just see what happens. Like try it for like with these tools, you got to try them at least for say a month and see what happens. And then you can make your choice whether it works or it doesn't work. See how it goes, and you can let me know. I'm happy to hear people's stories that listen to my stuff, and send me information, send me email or something and saying, look, I tried your tools and it worked, or you can even say it didn't work, but maybe this isn't for you. What else is possible there, and what gift and contribution can I be for you choosing more kindness? And for yourself, choosing more kindness for yourself. What if you chose kindness for you today? And thank you very much for listening in.